Welcome to the Lex Buds and Pick and Roll podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts, Brandon.
And with you as always is Tyler.
Whoa, Tyler. Talk about a busy week, man. You know, last show I said, oh, this is a really busy week. We're going to have to cut some stuff out. We don't have enough time. And then this week says, hold my beer. We're just getting started. 2021's just getting started.
Yeah, 2021 said the 2020 hold my beer. That is what just happened.
I think a lot of people were holding beers after this week, Tyler, to be honest with you. And truth be told, I think you're probably holding a drink yourself. We're watching the Cleveland Browns game while recording the show.
Yes, we are. It is the first playoff appearance from the Browns in 19 years. This is a very exciting day. But, you know, work calls. You know, we can't just skip a week of the show because the Browns are playing in a playoff game.
Correct.
So we've got it on. I may get slightly distracted, or if you hear me yell out an obscenity or something during the middle of debate, it's just I got excited from the Browns.
Well, and look, this is going to be an interesting show, right? We've got some good news on the UK front, right? We won a couple of games this last week, had a beat down of Florida. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about booing players in Rupp Arena. We're also going to talk about basically what happened in Washington, D.C. this past week. So it's going to be very interesting. And I guarantee that somebody that listens will be ticked off because you literally can't say more than 2 words out loud anymore or express an opinion without somebody thinking you're nuts and saying, you should unfriend me now. I think that's like what you do now.
Yeah, it is. If you have an opinion of any kind, one of us is probably going to disagree with it at some point today, but that's okay.
What do we care? We're drinking bourbon, watching the Browns, and recording a show. Like, what do we care, right?
Amen. Life is not that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tyler, tell me about the week, man. Obviously, you've been getting jazzed up for the Browns game, but aside from the Browns, are there any other happenings in the household this week?
No, that's really been our main focus. I know my wife has been very excited. No, she doesn't care. But
I know she could care less.
Oh!
He's in.
Touchdown!
They're up 14-0.
Oh my God, what is happening? We're up 14-0 right now.
This is like that Office episode. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
All right,
anyway.
this show is going to be completely off the rails.
It needs to be.
If this continues, I'm going to be having a lot more bourbon, and things could get interesting.
Before we get into it too far, though, I do want to let people know it's going to get even further off the rails later because you and I are going to do a reaction video to the new music video out by Florida Georgia Line called New Truck.
Oh, boy.
And you know my feelings about Florida Georgia Line.
Yeah, anybody who's ever listened to this show knows very well your feelings on Florida Georgia Line. So that's going to be interesting. You will definitely want to stay with us through the end, folks, because it's going to be a heck of a show.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be something.
It'll be something.
So your wife doesn't care about the Browns game. I'm not surprised. My wife wouldn't care either.
I mean, she's happy for me because, you know, it's been 19 years.
Yeah,
I have taken her to a Browns game once before when we first started dating.
What a way to reel her in.
That's right.
She must have been blown away. She's like, God, Tyler's way better than any of these other people.
Listen, nothing says romance like a weekend getaway in Cleveland, especially in the dog pound, which is where we were sitting with the most drunk fans in the stadium.
That's why I said by comparison, you probably look like $1 million.
Well,
like,
that's true.
I've got the catch of the day. These guys are nuts. This guy right here, he's got it all together.
Yeah.
This isn't bad.
Yeah, maybe that's what everyone should do. When you first start dating someone, take them to a Browns game, sit in the dog pound, and you'll look like The Bachelor.
Yeah, that's essentially what you were, Tyler. That's really funny, man.
How have you been, sir? What's been going on?
You know, the week's been pretty good. We had another kid's birthday party, so that was kind of fun. We did one of those breakout games. Have you ever been to these breakout rooms where they put you in a scenario and they give you an hour to get out?
I have. We did it at work one time. It's kind of a team building thing.
Yeah, so we went into this one. Apparently, it's one of the largest ones in the whole country. It's a 3-story castle. And you have to go through all these different puzzles and riddles and try to go all the way up through the castle, up to the top, and get back down by opening up a series of doors. It's pretty intense, man. It's really intense. We didn't do it. We got down to the last part, and they came in and got us. Our time was up.
Oh, man.
But really fun. And, I went to the Mexican restaurant right before the show started, so I'm in a really good mood other than that. I'm feeling good.
That's nice.
It's going to be a good show. Anytime I eat Mexican food, I'm in a good mood. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, how can you not? Well, we'll see if you're still in a good mood after we talk about all the news this week.
Oh, jeez. I don't really want to talk about it, but we have to. Tyler, let's get started first of all.
All right, let's do some good news first.
Yeah, Tyler, the UK players took a knee before the game and then made Florida bend the knee as they pay as they laid a beatdown on the Gators Saturday 76-58. Kentucky is ranked first in the SEC. We're on our first winning streak of the year, and Keon Brooks is back. What do you think of the game, and what are the implications for the rest of the year, Tyler?
Man, who saw this coming a couple weeks ago when we were sitting at 1-6? Who would think that a few weeks later we are now in first place? We're tied for first place with Alabama, so we will be playing on Tuesday night for sole possession of first place in the conference. It's unreal, the transformation that has occurred so quickly. I mean, usually with Calipari teams, you see kind of a gradual improvement.
Yep.
I can't remember a team that just seemed like they were flipping a switch that all of a sudden has just turned into world beaters. I mean, my goodness, this is the best by far the team has looked all year. That may have been one of the best played games even of the Calipari era. I mean, that was just a thorough beatdown at Florida. It was the Cats' biggest victory in the Cal era at Florida, which is saying something because we've had some heck of a good teams
we have.
that have gone down to Gainesville. But this team had the largest point margin victory in the history of the Cal era at Florida. Things seem to be clicking. I hate to say it, but I'm getting my hopes up again now.
Yeah, are there tickets left on the bandwagon? Can we jump? Is it too late to jump back on? Because here's the deal. I mean, we have to call a spade a spade. When the team's not playing well, we have to say something. We can't let teams go 1-6 every year. Is that fair? I mean, we just can't let that happen. So it's important that people vocalize their frustration, and by people doing that, we've got a great three-point shooter in Dante Allen out on the floor. It's spreading things out, and miraculously, people are getting a lot more open shots since all this started. Huh? Look at that. We may have been a presence for something good, Tyler. We may have done something good as a fan base, which is really exciting. I think the presence of Keon Brooks is bigger than I thought. I mean, he was a role player at best last year, right? He was 7th or 8th man. This year, it's pretty evident he's going to be a leading player in the team. I mean, he seems to do everything. He came back from an injury and just looked like a totally new player. Like, he could just jump through the roof. He was doing everything. I was really impressed with Keon Brooks. And basically, the whole team, it was like a basketball clinic. You know what I mean? It's like every drill run to perfection. We haven't seen that this year. And we haven't seen it a lot the last few years, actually, in the Cal era, which is why people have been getting frustrated. This was kind of a throwback to what we used to do early on in Cal's reign at Kentucky. I was very happy with it, and I think it bodes well for the rest of the year. I just don't know if it's too late. You know, we're still in a severe hole here. And, I just hope we have enough time to dig out of it. So,
yep, that's the question. Is it too little, too late? Are we may still have to end up winning the conference tournament, depending on how things shake out. But it is great to see the turnaround Cal has made. I agree 100% with you. I think our criticism was warranted. I don't think, I see a lot of people online on Twitter saying, oh, all those fans who are criticizing Calipari, I bet you all feel dumb now. No, I don't. I mean, the criticism was deserved. We were 1-6. I mean, that doesn't mean we just always, just let Cal do whatever he wants and not offer our opinions on things and just let him coach, which is what a lot of people are saying. Like, all these fans just need to let Cal coach, let him do his thing. Well, you can't always have that mindset, but obviously we're not here to just be haters. We're happy. We want the team to win, so
absolutely,
I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier, Tyler. We don't have to sit here and complain too much today. What a change. I'm not really sure what to think, but Overall, I was happy about it. I just hope we have enough time. Time is not on our side right now, and we've got to play our best basketball basically the rest of the year. We can't afford to have too many slip-ups. We'll see how it goes.
Yep. You mentioned this a little bit already, but welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Keon Brooks is back, baby. After sitting out the first 9 games of the season, Brooks was finally cleared by the team doctors to play. Sophomore forward, the only returning player from last year's team. Brandon, how much of a difference do you think Keon will make?
Well, I think it's not only evident. His play has been elevated. Of course, this is one game, but it's definitely a step above where he was at the end of last year. And if you recall, at Florida last year, he was there for the big tip-in, right? I mean, he was right there. He had a big game in that one as well. So he left on a good note the previous year, comes back after injury on a high note this year. But from talking to the players, it seems like a lot of people look to him to see how he handles things. And the fact that he had to sit out through injury this long and people are still listening to him, want to hear what he has to say, and are following his lead, says a lot not only about his abilities, but his leadership abilities as well. I was really impressed overall.
Yeah, you don't think, if you just look at Keon Brooks' stats from last year, he averaged 4 points and 3 rebounds. And so you're kind of thinking, all right, how much can that possibly make? A guy averaging 4 and 3, is that really going to be a big deal? Mm-hmm. Clearly it is. It is a huge deal. Just having somebody who knows Cal's system and just knows Cal. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys have never been yelled at like they have in their life, like Calipari yells at them.
Yeah.
And so you kind of need somebody that can take these young guys under their wings and say, hey, it's okay. We're going to get through it. We're going to fight through, and just kind of offer that encouragement and leadership and be the example for the other guys. He looks spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you follow the plus minus, which is one of my favorite stats, I always look at in the box score. Keon Brooks is plus minus. He was plus 24 in the time he was in the game.
In 23 minutes?
Yeah, in 23 minutes.
That's impressive. So, a good guy to have on the court. Would that be safe to say, Tyler?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Welcome back, Keon.
Welcome back, Keon. Tyler, I don't know if you know about this, but athletic director Mitch Barnhart was very upset at the Vanderbilt game this last week. You know why? Because there were some boos that got into Rupp Arena. And we know the athletic director doesn't like boos in Rupp Arena. It will not be served, and it will not be tolerated. However, in this case, the boos were coming from the crowd at BJ Boston for taking terrible shots. Tyler,
boo!
Boos.
I just now got
boos,
it.
See,
Boos,
I was
alcohol.
I was waiting until the light bulb went off. I was waiting, and then it went off like alcohol. Correct.
Sorry.
We know Mitch Barnhart doesn't like booze in Rupp Arena, but apparently it got in, and he was very upset. Tyler, what do you think about the booing or the boos of BJ Boston, and which one do you think Mitch Barnhart hates worse, boos at BJ Boston or actually drinking booze in Rupp Arena?
Wow, that's a tough call. I think he probably hates both of them. But
I'm glad it took you a few seconds to get there.
Yeah, I'm sure people listening on podcasts, you're going to want to go back and watch the YouTube clip of that one, because I'm sure you can literally see the light bulb above my head going off.
It was pretty funny. It was funny.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. And I try to relate everything in life back to a Chris Rock skit, because I think most things can be applied to a Chris Rock skit.
And yeah, pretty much.
And I'm talking about back to the bit he did about O.J. Simpson. You remember the Chris Rock O.J. Simpson bit, right?
Tyler, I could almost quote every Chris Rock CD from like 1994 through the early 2000s.
Okay, well, so you'll at least be on the same page with me.
I know where you're going.
He's talking about after O.J. and Nicole got divorced, how she basically bled the dude dry, took him for everything. He was having to pay her like $12,000 a month for food or something ridiculous. And so Chris Rock has this line where he says, "Now, I'm not saying he should have killed her, but I understand."
Jeez.
And this is kind of how I feel about people booing BJ Boston. I'm not saying they should have booed him, but I understand.
Can you do it in your Chris Rock voice, though? It means a lot more when you do it that
I'm not saying they should have booed him, but I understand.
Oh, gee. What's wrong with you, man? It's tricky because at the end of the day, these are 18 and 19-year-old kids, correct? But at the same time, we're supposed to care enough to support the program and put money in the pockets of the athletic department. So we have to be somewhere between, we can't care because they're too young, and we care too much, and we're like verbally assaulting them, right? And I think booing is actually okay, but I wouldn't go around and do it, on Twitter and go up to his face and say, "Oh, you suck, BJ Boston," all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But you know what? If somebody needs to get their stuff together, hey, give them a little booing. I'm okay with that. This is the kind of boos that Mitch Barnhart should allow in Rupp Arena. But if we play well, we'll never hear it, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, we boo the other team. We're booing other 18 and 19-year-old kids.
Yeah. So the moral argument's out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's 100%. I mean, we boo when the other team is shooting free throws. Remember, Ashley Judd had that big tweet a few years ago where she was making fun of our fans for booing and cheering against them when they were shooting free throws.
Yeah.
So I get it. I don't necessarily. I mean, I get the argument that why are you booing an 18-year-old kid? But at the same time, as fans, we can't accept 1 and 6. We if we don't criticize, if we don't make our concerns known, I mean, Mitch Barnhart is not going to do anything about it.
Correct.
I mean, what if we were 1-6 next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and we say, oh well, I'm still going to go support the team. That's okay, Cal. 1-6 is fine. You'll get them next time.
Yep.
I mean, at some point, the fans are the ones who have the impact to make change.
Yep.
And without the fans doing that, then that kind of stuff could just continue.
Jeez, the Browns just scored another touchdown. Oh, man.
It is 21-0. What is happening?
Crazy.
I may not sleep tonight.
Yeah, this is going to be a wild show. All right, Tyler.
Oh my God.
What do we have next, man?
Okay. Continuing on with BJ Boston. UK fans aren't the only ones who have observed his poor play. An ESPN article came out this week. Draft expert Jonathan Givony said that his stock could drop even farther if he doesn't turn things around quickly. But the most interesting line from the article that I want us to discuss, Brandon,
Sure,
is this quote. The hope among optimists is that Boston's inability to show anything beyond small glimmers of what made him such a coveted prospect in high school lies more in Kentucky's archaic offense, poorly constructed roster, and his own lack of physical strength, rather than deal-breaking talent shortcomings. Brandon, do you blame Kentucky's offense and the roster Cal has put together on Boston's struggles?
No, because Cal's offense, regardless of what he's saying he's wanting to run, has nothing to do with dribble to the middle where all the defenders are, dribble it off your leg, or pull up for a contested two. There's no offense that he's run since he's been here where I know that that's the go-to shot. However, that is seemingly what B.J. Boston does on the regular. I mean, that's what he does. That's who B.J. Boston is as of today. And I don't blame that on Cal. You can say that he's not playing the NBA game where everything's spread out and everybody's shooting threes. You don't want this team doing that. If we spread out and shot threes all the time, we don't make enough of them to play that way. Now, you could say he needs to recruit better shooters to do that. We have done that, and they've transferred. So, it's like, well, what do you want him to do here? He's got to play with the team he has. I do think he needs to realize that we don't score points based on wingspan. Whenever he recruits these kids, it would be nice if we found more guys that could put the ball in the hole. But I don't think this is Cal's fault. Nobody runs an offense where you pull up for a long two that's contested after dribbling into the defense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with you that I don't want this team shooting a lot of threes like most teams do. But I think you could then make the argument that is a shortcoming of the roster that he has assembled, that we don't have many three-point threats. I mean, we have Dante Allen, we have Mintz. Outside of that, I mean, we have guys who are okay, but I wouldn't really...
We've got Johnny Juzang at UCLA and Jamal Baker, Pac-12 Player of the Week, a couple weeks ago out in Arizona. So we have them. They're just on other teams now, which is the unfortunate part.
Yeah, that's true. But I get the argument. Cal's offense probably is a little bit behind what most modern teams are doing, especially in the NBA. But I don't think that's ever going to change. I think it is what it is. I think.
Do you feel like this is going to hurt future recruiting, though? Because people are going to look at B.J. Boston almost a can't-lose recruit. Like, this guy's off the charts. And then he goes to Kentucky, and it's like, well, what happened? You were like top 5. You were projected to be in the top 5 draft picks next year. What happened? If I were an opposing coach, I would use that and say, hey, you want to get B.J. Bostoned? That's what's going to happen if you go there. Come here, we shoot threes and do all this other stuff. I worry about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that happened a lot after Scal, too. He was the number one guy, and then our recruiting dipped a couple years after that.
It did. Well, let's hope that it's not a trend. We'll see where it goes. I mean, you never know. Tyler, are you okay? The Browns scored 3 touchdowns so far. Are you going to be okay?
First quarter. What is happening?
I know.
I'm just wondering, how are we going to blow this?
I don't know.
How are we going to Browns this up?
Of course. Tyler, it feels like we are all Tom Hanks from the movie Castaway as the BBN is saddened by the loss of Wilson. In this case, it's Terry Wilson. Wilson decided to enter the transfer portal and use his last year of eligibility elsewhere. Tyler, what is Touchdown Terry's legacy at UK, and will we be okay without him next year?
Well, he came with the nickname Terry Touchdown. Can we now call him Terry Transfer?
Oh, yikes, Tyler. Coming with the heat.
Yeah, I was saving that one.
Oh, Terry Transfer.
Terry Transfer, that's what I'm calling it.
No, we need to get that article up on the website before somebody steals that one. That's really good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I've been hoping that you wouldn't use that so that I could use it.
That's awesome.
But in seriousness, this seems just like, rarely are breakups mutually agreed upon. Usually when somebody breaks up with someone, it's because of one person dumping the other one, not because they both thought it would be best to end it.
Right.
This appears to be one of those few cases where I think it was in Terry's best interest to leave because there are other guys waiting in the wings who would most likely be starting over him next year. And it benefits everybody to for UK to not have to
we've got
bench
quarterbacks.
a senior quarterback.
We've got good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Waiting, right? 2 good quarterbacks supposedly. In Bo Allen and Joey Gatewood. Now, neither one of them really did much this year, but we didn't really have a lot of offensive weapons to go with them. So I'm interested to see what happens next year, especially with the new offensive coordinator coming in. Who knows what it's going to look like next year? We really don't know. But when you look at those 2 guys coming up behind you and the fact that you had a subpar year coming off a major injury, I think the writing was on the wall, and you really didn't have a choice. I mean, sometimes you can just see okay, one of these things is not going to work.
Yeah.
We can't play 3 quarterbacks at one time. And he was probably lowest on the totem pole with, the new guys coming up and learning the offense even more.
Yeah. So, what is your lasting legacy of Terry Wilson? How do we remember Terry Wilson?
It's really weird. He won the most games in a season since I've been alive.
Yeah, he was 17-8 as a starter.
17-8, but to me, I felt like we won the games in spite of Terry Wilson. This is just me. I could be wrong on this, and people may get ticked off. I think we won the games in spite of Terry's shortcomings. If we had a remotely decent quarterback that could get the ball downfield routinely and hit targets, I think we do even better. So I think we actually won those games because we had Benny Snell, we had Lynn Bowden Jr., and the best offensive line in the history of this school. Yeah.
I think that's totally fair because the bar was raised a little bit with the success we had with Steven Johnson. A lot of people expected this could be a team to compete for an SEC championship this year.
Yep.
And just he didn't live up to the expectations. I think a lot of it's because of the injury. A lot of it's just he's maybe not the quarterback that we expected him to be at this point.
I thought Steven Johnson was
Oh, my God, the Browns just got another interception.
Oh, my God. I thought Steven Johnson was a better quarterback, just injured. I felt like Steven Johnson won games for us at some points in his career. So, I put Steven Johnson ahead of Terry Wilson, even though Terry obviously had more wins. But that's just me.
All right, a bit of breaking news, Brandon. We did not have this into our rundown, but we got to talk about it now.
Let's talk about it.
Kentucky just got a addition to their team for next year in basketball. Oscar Shibwe.
Just pronounce it like it's spelled.
The sophomore at West Virginia University, 6'9", 260-pound center.
A beast.
Absolute beast. Is coming to the Cats. He had just announced last week that he was putting his name into the transfer portal. He averaged basically a double-double last year as a freshman, 11 points, 9 rebounds.
Crazy.
And he is eligible not to play, but to practice immediately.
Practice?
We talking about practice?
Come on.
Not the game. We talking about practice, man. Brandon, are you
Dude,
excited?
This is great news. This is great news. I mean, we could always use a big man like this. I mean, the guy is an absolute bruiser. I know that Calipari likes guys that beat and bang and do the dirty work, and he's already won accolades. In the Big 12, so that obviously counts for something. That's not a scrub conference. There's some really quality teams there, so I'm very excited about it. Kentucky was, I think, second on his list in his initial recruitment anyway. And I guess him and Bobby Huggins didn't necessarily get along, and I consider Bobby Huggins to be a poor man's Calipari anyway, so maybe he wants the real thing. Bobby Huggins and Calipari both have that slick back, greased hair thing going on. They wear wind suits a lot on the sidelines now. I feel like they're like best friends or something. So maybe I was getting ready to try to say his last name, but I don't want to embarrass myself. Maybe he will like the upgraded version of the windsuit, slick back hair, and Calipari.
Absolutely. Browns are getting ready to score again. I'm sorry. Lost my train of thought. But yeah, you nailed it. This is the kind of big man Calipari loves. He loves a big, strong, physical shot blocker, guy who can rebound, play defense. This is right in Cal's wheelhouse. I think this guy will be a huge success in the centerpiece, at least of our front court next year.
I tell you, use that, the centerpiece. Nice work. You didn't even do that on purpose, did you?
Yeah, nope. You're welcome.
Well, Tyler, I tell you what, this is going to be a really interesting segment coming up. So we mentioned in our third segment we're going to do a reaction to Florida Georgia Line's new truck video. Neither one of us have ever seen that. But in this second segment, I think we're going to have a unique combination, Tyler. We're going to talk about some of the most controversial things that happened this past week in D.C. The Browns just scored another touchdown. This will be the only show, the only podcast, probably the only video that you see on YouTube where people are having a serious conversation about major topics going on in this country while mixing that in with the Browns-Steelers game. So if you want something unique, this is definitely going to be the show for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Whatever you just said is correct.
This next segment's going to be really interesting. I can't wait for it, Tyler. Let's get to it. Let's watch the Browns kick this extra point and get on to segment 2, and we will see you all right after the break. Welcome back. Segment 2, Lex Buds and Pick and Roll podcast. Tyler, that was an interesting first segment talking positive UK news, which is good. Covering some Cleveland Browns football games while we're doing the podcast. And by the way, if you are watching this, keep in mind we are maybe secretly watching the Browns game in the background while we're doing this. But what better thing to talk about while you're distracted than all of the news that's gone on basically in Washington, D.C. this week and everything surrounding that. We're going to cover that, and make sure you stay tuned for segment 3 where we talk about our reaction to the new Florida Georgia Line video, new truck. I'm excited.
I mean, what better way to bring us back together after everything that's happened this week than some Florida Georgia Line?
Well, we'll see how that goes. Tyler, what do we got first on this segment?
All right, so we're going to go back to Tuesday of last week, and we'll kind of work through everything kind of chronologically.
That was so long ago.
All right, it feels like forever ago. But on Tuesday, America had Georgia on their minds. Mm-hmm. In one of the biggest elections in recent history, Democrats won both Georgia runoffs and thus won control of the U.S. Senate. Democrats Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff's victories helped ensure that Mitch McConnell will no longer be the majority leader, but instead the minority leader. How in the world, Brandon, did Republicans lose in Georgia?
Tyler, I mean, I think this is going on what we saw in the presidential election. I mean, they obviously have a very good ground game there in Georgia, and I think they just washed, rinsed, and repeated. I don't think it helped. This is going to get into a whole thing. And let me just say this, first of all. People are going to be really ticked off at what we have to say. Okay, there's no way to talk about anything that happened this week without people being really upset. Is that correct?
Fair.
Okay, very fair. So I think that all the stuff with the election fraud things going around and being thrown around really hurt the Republicans in this race. It's just unnecessary. It didn't need to happen. And what better way to turn out the vote for the other side than for the other one to be claiming election fraud and voter fraud on your newly elected president coming in? I mean, it was like a disaster. I can't believe it happened, but that's what you get. That's what happens.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he was actually encouraging people not to vote, which just seems a little crazy. But
that's not how you win, by the way.
No.
Just so you know, just a little insider tip for the next time this comes around. You have to get more votes.
Yes,
which is maybe something different than what people are used to. I don't know.
But the staggering thing to me was the voter turnout in Georgia. 4.4 million voters, which was a 60% voter turnout. That's insane. When have you ever seen an election with 60% voter turnout for a non-presidential race? I mean, that was actually higher than their turnout for the 2016 presidential election.
Well, I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one, that Facebook reminder thing that said, hey, go vote, obviously works. So for everybody that was getting upset, like, God, this thing's always on here, will it go away? Well, it seemed to have worked. The other thing is people don't have anything to do because we're all in lockdown. So, hey, I'm going to go out and vote. That's like the new rave party. People go out there like, hey, what are you doing? Dude, I'm going to go down to drop my ballot in the box. Heck yeah, man, I'll go with you. Let's carpool. And then next thing you know, you got, 60% voter turnout. That's how I imagine it happening.
Yeah, it's just something to do. On a personal note, this could not have happened to a better person than to have Mitch McConnell. I just wish I could have been a fly on the wall at his house when he saw the returns on that, because he has been a nuisance to...
Oh, a nuisance, Tyler.
A nuisance.
Ooh, okay.
A nuisance to democracy.
These are Tyler's words
For
now.
a long, long time, he has obstructed anything and everything that has tried to have been passed. So couldn't have happened to a better person. Eat it, McConnell.
Oh, my God. Tyler, You and McConnell, I tell you what, I hope you guys go out for lunch someday and just have a chat. That's really interesting. Tyler, on January 6th, Trump supporters gathered in the streets of D.C. outside the Capitol to stop the steal, as electoral votes were being certified that day to award Joe Biden the presidency. And unless you've been living under a rock, I think everyone saw kind of the chaos that ensued. The aftermath left 5 people dead, including a police officer, many others injured, including many arrests, which are still ongoing, and caused quite a bit of property damage. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the situation kind of as it was happening? I'm sure we were all getting updates, whether it's via social media or news or whatever we're watching. How did you see it? Like, how was the information coming in, and what were you thinking?
It's really interesting. You know, I as many people are now, I'm working from home. I'm set up in our bedroom closet is where my work is.
Perfect setup.
Yeah, where else would you rather work than in your closet? So I had the TV on in the bedroom all day. You know, my idea is, you know, I'm just wanting to listen to the ballots be counted. You know, you at the start of the day, that was the story was, hey, they're going to certify the electoral votes today. The story was not the rally at the beginning of the day, but it was by the end of the day.
Boy, was it.
And so as the day progressed and the tide started to turn, it was just unreal, man. It was one of those days. I hate to compare it to 9/11, but that's the only thing in my lifetime that I've experienced where I was just watching the news in shock and in disbelief at what was happening. And
that's a pretty big comparison, Tyler.
Well,
You're aware of that. I mean, was it really like that? I'm just asking. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying, was it really that deep?
I mean, like I said, it's the only thing I know to compare it to, honestly,
Okay.
Where just the fact that I was in shock, that I was in disbelief, that I was a mess of emotions. Like, I was angry, I was completely saddened, like just all these different feelings that you can't believe this is happening to our Capitol building. Like, that was the thing with 9/11. It's like, that's the World Trade Center. Like, that's the Pentagon. Like, these places that we feel like are the most secure places in the world and are symbols for our government and our democratic system to just be under attack, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what was shocking to me, and that's what I will just remember it as a sad, dark day in American history.
Yeah, and let me just say this. Number one, I'm going to get this out of the way right off the bat so everybody knows exactly where I stand on this. I'm a registered independent. Tyler, I can't remember if you are or not. I have no idea.
I am as well.
Okay, you are. You know how many times I voted for Donald Trump?
How many times?
2 times.
Okay.
So everything I say is coming from somebody that voted for the man twice.
Okay.
All right? Even though I voted twice for him, I can tell you what, this rally was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. You know, last week I said I do not like this idea. What's the positive that could, let's say you're starting out the day. Let's say you're that morning.
All right.
What's the best case scenario? If your best case scenario is that you're going to zip tie Nancy Pelosi and get Instagram photos with her, that's a really bad best case scenario, right? Because that's what some people intended to do. Bad best case scenario. If that's your best case, then don't have the rally at all. There's nothing that's going to overturn the election. And I honestly think that people had been misled big time that showed up to this rally. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, the writing, I call balls and strikes now. I got out of the political party stuff a long time ago. I call balls and strikes, and as I saw it, dumb move to have the rally in the first place. Trump and it just basically served up this whole thing on a silver platter. Did he directly tell people to go in and attack the Capitol? No. But talk about setting the breeding ground for it right there. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. He set the stage, and the players did what they want, but he left that opening for the players to do something dangerous that didn't need to happen at all. It's done. And that's coming from somebody that voted for him twice. So there we go.
Yep, I think you hit the nail on the head that people were misled, and as I remember, a dark day. I mean, seeing people carrying rebel flags in the Capitol building. I mean, just made me very sad and disheartened.
Yeah, crazy. I didn't like it.
One of the big questions after the initial shock and awe of what was going on is, how did the police let this happen? For weeks, we talked about it on this show in the week leading up to this, that Trump and his supporters had been publicly planning a, quote, wild, I mean, that was in Trump's tweet, it's going to be wild. He said that. Publicly planning a wild protest. The Capitol was easily taken over by this mob of people.
Mm-hmm.
How scary is it to you that one of the most important buildings in our country could be so easily taken? Or any other thoughts you want to share?
Well, here's the thing that I've noticed, and let's just go back over the course of this last year in 2020. Now, I'm not going to compare the two things, right? We obviously had protests and fires and stuff all summer, correct? I'm not going to compare the validity of one to the other because they're apples and oranges, okay? What I'm going to talk about is the fact that I'm amazed that not only is the Capitol able to be basically ransacked, however you say it, but that a city in Seattle will allow a 6-block radius for somebody to take it over and claim it as an autonomous zone. I'm surprised that people are okay with letting cities burn and just letting it happen. And I'm surprised that the Capitol Police were able to let this happen. It's like all these structures that we thought were so secure, and again, not comparing the validity of one to the other, I'm just saying from the police presence in general. I'm surprised that all the things we thought were safe, like people couldn't take over city blocks. People couldn't just burn buildings down. People can't go to the Capitol. All those things you can pretty much do now. Right. You know what I mean? If you're just thinking from police presence alone. So how safe are we really? This is going across the whole country, and it ended up culminating in what happened in D.C. It just surprises me. The things you think are safe are not quite as safe, I think, as we thought they were.
Yep.
It's scary to me. I thought we would be better than that.
Right. I agree 100% on that. It is scary to think, because this was an epic failure on the part of the Washington, D.C. police. The police chief has already resigned, not surprisingly.
Probably a smart idea.
Saw that coming.
Yep.
Because they knew so many weeks ahead of time. They should have been prepared. Now, I know you just said you didn't want to compare it to some of the other protests, but if you look at the police forces in most of those other protests we saw this summer, police were in riot gear. Mm-hmm. They were forming boundaries, barricades.
Yep.
People shouldn't have even been able to get to the steps of the Capitol building. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing prohibiting from that. And so, that leads to the, is this because, it was white people and black people? That's led to all kind of discussion online. Mm-hmm. But, just the fact is the police were not as well prepared as in the Black Lives Matter protest. They weren't in the riot gear as they were in the Black Lives Matter protest. And I think that is a reasonable question to ask, well, why was that?
Here's the thing. Let me just play devil's advocate for a second. The other half of me says, well, how good was the police presence? Because, you and I and everybody else saw this. Cities were burning down. So how strong was the presence? I think we allowed autonomous zones where police just got out of the way. Mm-hmm. So, it depends on where you were at in that specific situation. In my opinion, I may be way off on this, but I think as those protests got on in the summer, the police presence definitely grew. I think maybe it caught a lot of people by surprise initially, and then it got stronger. And that may have been the case with this protest. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I don't blame the police on the ground in D.C. There was a ton of people at that rally riot. Yeah. A ton of people. And you saw the limited police presence. What else are they going to do? And I know people were upset that they were letting people just walk out of the Capitol after they did it. But that's the smartest thing that could have happened. Oh, yeah. Because if they would have tried to arrested people there, for people that like law and order, they would have taken care of that police officer, right?
Yep.
And that's scary. If you're a police officer, you're not going to cause a scene where you're surrounded by hundreds of people. Plus, none of these people had masks on, conveniently. Right. So it's like, hey, Bill, we've got all these guys on camera. Why don't you let them go, and we'll arrest them at their house next week? Oh, okay. That sounds awesome. So actually, I think that was smart. The smartest thing they could have done, because there would have been a lot more injuries and possibly more fatalities on the scene if they had started arresting people right there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I myself was like, why are they just letting these people go? Like, arrest them right now. Don't just take their picture and try to catch them later. You've got to arrest them while you're taking their picture. But once I thought about it, what you just said, exactly, it makes perfect sense as to why they did.
Well, what do you think though? Because Kamala Harris, the upcoming vice president, even said, or it might have been Joe Biden, said that. Actually, I think it was Joe Biden that said, if these were Black Lives Matter protesters, that the police presence would have been different. Do you think that's the case? That's a touchy subject, but we're going to ask.
Well,
what do you think?
We've already seen that it was different, right? I just said the police were more prepared, or maybe not more prepared, but at least appeared to be more prepared. They were in the riot gear. Mm-hmm. We saw much more of a willingness to use violence towards the protesters, whether that was in reaction to something or initiated. You know, you saw Trump's tweet when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Where were those tweets while this was happening? There was lots of looting going on.
I tell you what, that was the most disappointing part. That was the most disappointing part to me, and that's when I said, you know what? Even a guy like myself, I'm 38 years old. God, I'm 38 years old. I made a mistake, right? But in voting that way. And if he runs in 2024, which I hope he doesn't, I'm kind of done. I think you stick a fork in the guy, he's done politically as far as I know. I know a lot of people are going to be really upset about that. But, again, I call balls and strikes. I voted for him twice. What more do you want? You know, I did it. Okay?
And I think that's exactly how you should be as a voter. I mean, just because you voted for somebody or were for a party at one time, you and I both used to be Republicans, and then we switched to be independents. You don't have to remain loyal to a party forever.
Yeah.
You can change your mind on things.
Absolutely.
The last thing I want to say, I'm no longer impressed with Nicolas Cage stealing the Declaration of Independence anymore in that movie, because apparently all you have to do is just walk in and you could take it.
Walk in with a horn helmet on,
Yeah.
and they get you right in. Right? Jeez Louise. The guy in the horn helmet, I couldn't believe that, man. That was crazy.
It was a mess.
It was a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. Tyler, Donald Trump will officially leave office on January 20th after Joe Biden's inauguration, but as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. A groundswell of support for removing Trump from office before that day is growing. Leaders on Capitol Hill are urging impeachment or the use of the 25th Amendment to oust Trump this week. Tyler, do you think this is a good idea, and more importantly, do you think it will actually happen?
No. I think all those discussions are kind of a moot point. I mean, we're 11 days away from Biden being inaugurated?
As of the time of this recording, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, when has Congress ever gotten anything done in 11 days? I mean, I think the whole...
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that.
I think
before.
the whole Senate's on vacation right now, so they're not going to come back for an impeachment here. I mean, I just don't think with 11 days...
But do you do it to send a message? I guess that's the thing, is people, obviously, it's only a week and a half.
Yeah.
But the reason it's being brought up is people want to make it known, hey, we don't care how much time you have left, we're going to send a message. Do you think, to me, if I'm looking at it, to me, I don't think Trump's going to be able to do anything. First of all, he can't get, his social media is kind of shut off, which is a problem. Mm-hmm. So how is he going to gather people? I do have a little bit of a concern, though, because there has been chatter on some social media outlets that people are going to return on January the 19th.
I've seen that as well. It is very concerning.
So we'll see how it goes. I just think his statement on the day that these things were going on was pathetic. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Mm-hmm. I did. Yes.
It was pitiful. I just sat back and watched. I was like, "This is the best that you got. This is so disappointing." And I know people say, "Well, there were burning buildings this summer." I somewhat agree with you. I don't like any of it. Is there a way, Tyler, in this country to say that I don't like it when you burn innocent people's businesses down, and I also don't like it when people storm the Capitol? I just made a statement that I never see on Facebook. Can we just make a blanket statement that maybe we can all fall somewhere in between that, between lighting our country on fire and, sending a mob through a Capitol building? Can people still exist that don't like either one? That's where I am. I'll be honest with you. And I don't know how people feel about that, but I don't know. I just feel like there's not a lot of middle ground anymore.
Nope, I 100% agree with you. It feels like you have to follow. If you're a Trump supporter, you're supposed to agree with him on whatever he says. You can't have your own opinions.
Tyler, I got a Donald Trump shirt in my closet, for Pete's sake. I'm saying all this stuff. I've got Donald Trump shirts, not shirts. I've got a shirt in my closet.
So I mean, if you can talk like this about him, I mean,
I'm a guy. I'm just a guy. Donald Trump is not. I better be really careful with what I say. Take a step back, Brandon. Don't say what I want to say.
Okay.
Well, actually, let me say what I want to say.
You can say it.
Okay. Donald Trump is not Jesus Christ. He's also not Adolf Hitler. He's a dude that messed up pretty big. To me, he's just a guy. He's a rich guy. Mm-hmm. But he's a guy that messed up. And I just won't vote for him anymore. That's it. I don't think he's as bad as Hitler. I don't think he's, Jesus either. Although some people may think that he is. I think he's somewhere in between. That's a big window, by the way, for people to be in between.
No, it is, because it seems like you have to either, if you're on social media, you either think of him as one of those two people. people see Trump as a savior that is going to save America from all the problems that we've had, is going to make everything better. He's going to help us walk on water, and he's going to feed everybody with a fish and turn water into wine.
That's going to be awesome.
I mean, people treat Trump like he is the savior. And we talked about this last week when we were talking about we're talking about when people voted for their most admired person in the United States. And Trump and Biden were number one, or Trump was number one, Obama was number two, Biden was three. And we talked about how crazy it is that the three most admired people in our country are politicians.
Makes me sick.
That, honestly, I don't think Donald Trump gives a crap about anybody other than himself. I don't think he cares about people. And to a lesser extent, I don't think Joe Biden cares about you as an individual person. They don't know you. You don't even know these people. You've never met them. But you are willing to go die on a cross for them? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Tyler, you are so spot on. People care about these politicians more than those politicians will ever care about you. And that's across the board. Doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or anybody else in between. If you're putting your faith in a man, first of all, just a human being, your whole existence is on what another human being is doing, you are going to be very disappointed.
Yep.
Whether that, even if it's a politician or athlete or anybody, because, human beings are fundamentally flawed beings. So, I mean, that's just who we are. I don't know. I was just really disappointed with everything. I don't think that he's going to go. It's too late. Biden's going to get in, and we're going to move along our merry way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Biden getting in, on Thursday, moving on down our timeline, President Trump finally acknowledged that there would be an orderly and seamless transition of power. Thank God. We'll see. That remains to be seen. But on Friday, then said that he would not attend the Biden inauguration. Brandon, at this point, is it just in everyone's best interest that he not go, or do you think that he should fulfill this role that virtually every president in American history has done?
There's two ways that this could happen. One, he doesn't show up, and people are just like, okay. First of all, I don't think anybody's going to show up for the Biden thing anyway. I think they're planning on doing like a whole virtual thing. But if you really wanted to have a moment of solidarity in the country, if you really were interested in that, Donald Trump and Joe Biden would come together and do something together. In my opinion, you have a chance to do something monumental. Now, as we know with politicians, they always kick the can down the road and they won't do that. But if you really wanted to do something, I don't even need Donald Trump to say, I made a mistake. I just need him to say, this is a new president, treat him with respect, and don't treat him like you did me. I think Donald Trump got a raw deal for his first 3 years of his presidency with the whole Russia thing. It was BS. It was complete BS. If I were him, I would come out and say, you know what, don't do to this guy what happened to me. And he can leave on a high note. And just be done with it. You have a chance to do something big for your country, do it. He won't do it.
Yeah. You know,
with all that said, he's not going to do it.
Yeah, you know why he's not going to do that? Because sitting there as an outgoing president, especially just a one-term president, to be there for the newly inaugurated one, that requires a large amount of humility to acknowledge that you lost and you are still welcoming in this person that beat you. And Donald Trump does not have an ounce of humility.
Not going to happen.
In his body. Okay, he is not going to show unity. He has not shown unity in the last 4 years to anything to the Democratic side. Even though, this is something that separates us really from other countries, this peaceful transition of power. When other countries hold elections, they look at America's election like, what? The loser was there for the winner? Like,
he didn't try to kill the winner? What's going on?
There was no coup? Like, how do you all do that? And that's what makes America different from every other country. But instead, as you just said, this could have been an opportunity for Trump and Biden to come together. And I was even disappointed in Biden, because Biden said, well, that's the one thing I can agree with Trump on, is that I don't want him there either. I don't think he should have said that.
I agree 100%, Ty. That was really disappointing, too.
I think Biden should have been the bigger person and said, I will welcome Donald Trump to still be there. If he wants to come, we will welcome him. We will make him, involved in whatever he wants to do. But again, it's just this victim mentality.
Absolutely. Again, these politicians have an opportunity to do something bigger than themselves, do something for their country, and it's not going to happen. And again, this is why we don't put all our faith in politicians, Tyler, because they continuously miss out on the big moments to do something silly. So I was disappointed with that too, to be honest with you. I think both could do a lot better. I just sit here and think back. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't like Hillary Clinton, but you know what she did? She showed up at the inauguration with Bill Clinton and sat there and watched as a guy that she absolutely detested gave an inaugural speech. Mm-hmm. Talk about difficult. Yep. So that was the one thing. That's probably my favorite thing she's ever done on the short list of things that I like that she's done. Okay, but she did it, and that takes a lot of guts to do it. I wish Donald Trump could do the same because he's not running again. He's finished.
Well, we'll see. You have more faith in that than I do.
Well, that's what's happening.
What's next?
Tyler, the only tweets that Donald Trump will be hearing for the foreseeable future are those from the birds on the Trump golf course, as Twitter has permanently suspended Trump's Twitter account. Tyler, do you like the move, and what do you think this does to Trump supporters who were already concerned about social media silencing their views? This is touchy and a big deal.
I know we're probably going to butt heads and disagree on this one, but I think Trump absolutely needed to be kicked off social media. He incited a mob to our U.S. Capitol building. And then he, instead of encouraging them immediately to stop or to criticize them, says, "We love you. Go on home. We love you. You're good people." Again, that's not the reaction he's had to other protests. He has created this cult of followers through social media. I mean, to me, it's kind of like if Charles Manson would have had Twitter.
Oh, jeez. Oh, took my breath. Wait just a second here, Tyler. Are you telling me that Donald Trump is like Charles Manson?
In that he has created a cult, yes.
Okay.
He has created a cult following of thousands, millions of people. And he has given a voice to the insane. It used to be you had the guy at the end of your street who was crazy, and everybody just knew not to talk to him. It's like, oh, that's old, old man Witherspoon down there. He's a little crazy. He's always, no, Brandon, don't go talk to him if you're ever walking down the street. Mm-hmm. Well, now old man Witherspoon is on Twitter and is being spoon-fed these insane lies, and he's joining. Instead of him just talking crazy at the end of the street, he gets on Twitter and now can join other hundreds of thousands of people who also agree with him. And that's what led to this whole thing. If social media did not exist, if Donald Trump did not use Twitter in the way that he does, I don't even think we have remotely what happened at the Capitol building last week.
Okay, so here's where I think we're going to differ a little bit. First of all, Twitter, Facebook, and all these companies, they are private businesses. They can do whatever the heck they want, correct?
Agreed.
But I think there's two things to this. First of all, if you were trying to snuff out the conspiracy theorists and all that kind of stuff who already think big tech is against them, and they take down their leader of the conspiracy theories from the big tech, now you've put it all underground. And these things are just going to fester like crazy. You talk about feeding the conspiracy that big tech is going to take over everything. It just happened. I mean, you just took down their biggest leader. Mm-hmm. So these people have even more fuel to the fire to say, you know what? There's something to this. They're going to try to silence us, and they're going to feel marginalized. And we know that when people feel marginalized, they get violent. We saw that with the riots this summer, right? Or protests or riots this summer. When people feel marginalized and feel like they aren't being heard and they don't have another option, they do get violent. No matter what the situation is, whether it's political beliefs, whether it's what happened with Black Lives Matter, when people feel like they're not being heard, they get angry. Okay, so that's one concern. Mm-hmm. The other concern you have to look at on the whole is, okay, we're censoring people on social media now. We're completely banning people, right? They banned Alex Jones, who was one of the famed conspiracy theorists on Twitter a long time ago. He's been banned for quite a while. He's bigger than he ever was. And I feel like this is what's going to happen moving forward. I don't like censorship in general. I feel like you let people speak their ideas. And if you think they're dumb, then understand why they're dumb and give the counter argument to enough people and change their minds. I don't think you change their minds by censoring. I actually think you fuel their fire.
Well, to make to point that, when is the last time you've ever changed someone's mind on a Facebook or Twitter post?
That's the worst time to do it.
Is anyone's mind ever being changed in that format?
My favorite Facebook posts are the ones that end in, you know what, you're right. I'm going to move over to your side. Happens every day, Tyler. I see it all the time. All the time. But I agree with you. You don't change people's mind on that necessarily, but I don't know. I just feel like when you censor things, it's going to add to something later on. They may censor one view now. Well, later on, they may censor a view that you want. So you may agree with the censor now until it turns on you. And it always turns on you eventually.
Yeah, I will say I agree with you that this is a slippery slope when you start censoring people's ability to post on social media. But to me, it is a more worrisome and more dangerous slippery slope to allow people to post what we're seeing now, to allow crazy old man Witherspoon to gather his following to head down the Capitol and try to take over the government.
Well, to me,
that's more dangerous.
Let's think about this, Tyler, because Google and the App Store basically threatened to shut down Parler, which is the alternative social media app that is basically Facebook without filters or anything like that. It's just basically like the Wild West. Mm-hmm. Well, Apple and Google have threatened to shut that down, and in fact have done that in their app store. So how do you feel about these big companies like Facebook, Twitter, and now Apple and Google shutting off the ability for these people to even be able to communicate? Because that's what's happening now. Amazon has shut down the server for this Parler website to even operate. How do you feel about that? Because part of me is like, okay, these are gigantic monopolies at this point that are controlling the flow of communication. They have a lot of control.
They do, but this is, again, my point. It's a slippery slope, what you just said. Mm-hmm. But to me, what we're seeing is just so much more dangerous. If people weren't... We can no longer agree on what is truth anymore. And people...
That's not true.
And people can no longer... Not everybody, but a lot of people can no longer discern what's real and what's not. And we have so many people that just see something and accept it as 100% fact because they saw it on Parler or Facebook or Twitter. Mm-hmm. We have lost that ability.
But who is deciding what's true and what's not? Who is fact-checking the fact-checkers? It's like that old, there's a comic book series, Who Watches the Watchmen?
Okay, well, here's something that's fact.
Okay.
Mike Pence cannot overturn the electoral votes of the states. Donald Trump went on Twitter and said that he could. It is a fact that he cannot, but he was spreading it as propaganda to get his base riled up to come protest about it.
Okay.
When it was a blatant lie. It is fact. You can read the Constitution. It is fact.
So what you're saying, Tyler, if I'm correct, is that every time a politician uses something as propaganda that is not 100% fact, we should permanently suspend their Twitter? Is that your position?
Sure.
Great, they'll all be off Twitter tomorrow. So
yes, that'd be great.
If you want to get in touch with your politicians, you're going to have to get in touch with them via mail or go see them at their office because they all spread propaganda and half-truths. It's what happens.
Yes, and why does it have to happen? Why? Why do we have to allow that? Why can't we just shut them all down?
But why are you singling out
Let's just shut down all social media.
I think we'd all be better off for it.
We would be so much more happier.
Yeah, you're right. And... I agree. And I want to end, Tyler, before we go into segment 3, I want to say one last thing. If people really want healing and unity, what I've seen on Facebook the last few days and Twitter has been anything but. I feel like I'm in the middle of a bad divorce argument where everybody's trying to score the most points on the other side. Like, you rioted the Capitol. Well, you burned down my city. Well, you did this. Well, you did that. Be the bigger person and just rise above it. I'm tired of that, man. I'm done with it.
Me too.
Just do better. If everybody does like 10% better, country would be in a better place. Stop trying to score points, slam dunk on anybody for anything that's happened in 2020. We all sucked in 2020. Get over it. Let's move forward and move on.
All right. So as we move forward, we kind of have to do some reflecting. I want to ask you about, Brandon, Trump's legacy. After the events of this week, many are saying that Trump's legacy has been completely wiped out. What will be your lasting thoughts of the Donald Trump presidency, and how do you think he will be remembered in history?
Tyler, I think he has one of the most interesting presidencies I've ever seen. Because for the first 3 years of his presidency, he got hosed with I was getting ready to say an expletive, a BS Russia collusion thing that happened right after the election. Right? Everybody, Russia collusion. The news ran for it for 3 years. What a dud. And I just criticized the guy for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. I call balls and strikes here. That's what that was. It was BS. So he's had this cloud over him the whole time. He came through on a lot of promises to his voters. And I think all the way up until his State of the Union address, when he gave his State of the Union address in late January, maybe early February, when Nancy Pelosi ripped up the thing behind him, I don't know if you remember that. Mm-hmm. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to lose. This whole country is a machine. Like, we were a machine. Our economy was ridiculous. Things were going really well. Mm-hmm. Trump was a little bit of a nutcase, but it's like, hey, you know what? He's a nutcase, but things are running so efficiently. It's like, how can he lose?
Yeah.
And boy, he got jackhammered with the COVID virus. And his response, depending on how you look at it, I mean, he's not going to be able to control that. Once it's here, it's here. And he was kind of hosed on it. But at the same time, his comments were not very helpful to himself. So I think he was a victim of unfortunate circumstance, but his comments also led to his downfall and his handling of it, in my opinion. And then the way he went out, he could have went out as somebody, like we mentioned on the last show, where I said he should have went out and said, you know what, we did something that nobody thought we could do. I'm a businessman who came in and overtook the Republican Party and won the friggin' presidency. How many presidents have there been in our life?
44.
44 before me? I'm number 45. 45 people in the history of this country have done what I did, and we did something great. Thank you. I'll see you in 2024. Yep. Instead, he ended on such a low note. That's what everybody's going to remember. Everybody remembers the beginning and the end.
That's right.
And boy, this end sucked. And as a guy that voted for him twice, I just sit there and look like, why? You're making me look bad now. I voted for the guy that was in there the first 3 years. I don't think he was as bad as the media portrayed him to be. I don't think he's the saint that the other side portrayed him to be. I feel like he was somewhere in the center of all that. Somewhere in the center. That's a big swath of humanity there. Somewhere in the center. And he just ended poorly. Straight up. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, obviously I did not vote for Trump either time. And my kind of thought going into the Trump presidency was that as long as nothing catastrophic happens, either in our country or on a world stage, I think Trump will. I mean, I'm not going to love him, but I think we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And we made it about 3.5 years, or a little over 3 years, before COVID hit. And his handling has been terrible. And then you add in the events of last week, which were just an embarrassment. After 3 years, he probably wouldn't have been the worst president. I mean, he's not going to have been on Mount Rushmore. Let's just be honest.
He would go build his own Mount Rushmore and call it Trump Rushmore.
True. Trumpmore.
Mount Trumpmore. Exactly. He ain't going on no Mount Rushmore, Tyler. You know that.
But I mean, also think he's probably wouldn't have been in that bottom tier, probably, mm-hmm. and maybe, but but I think now after those two events, I think he is going to be in contention. The descendants of James Buchanan, who is unanimously considered the worst president in history.
You're a former history teacher, Tyler.
Yes, James Buchanan in every ranking of presidents is almost always dead last. 43 out of 43. I think his descendants may now finally have that burden off their back, because between these two events, I think there's going to be some consideration for Trump being the worst president we've ever had.
Yeah, I think before COVID hit, he was... Of course, it depends on who you ask, okay? It depends on who you ask. And my opinion really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But I thought he followed through on his promises, regardless if you agreed with those promises or not, right? You may have thought his promises were crap, but he did follow through on quite a bit. But, man, COVID smacked him around. He wasn't ready.
Yep.
Straight up, he wasn't ready. And I will give him some credit for getting the vaccine stuff through as quickly as it did. I thought that was good. But other than that, the rest of it was bad.
Bad.
Yeah, the treatment that he had was good, but, I didn't even – I don't know. It was just subpar. I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, it just wasn't as good as it could have been.
All right. Well, this has been an interesting segment, Brandon.
Let me take a deep breath for a second. Lord have mercy.
Wow. I don't know what the clock was on that one, but that was probably one of our longer segments that we've had. But we're gonna lighten this up a little bit in segment 3.
Thank goodness.
We're gonna end this on a happy note. I hope, maybe. We are going to, for the first time, play the new single from Florida Georgia Line, "New Truck," and you're going to get Brandon and I's honest initial reactions to their new hit single.
Tyler, just off the bat, which one do you think is going to be worse, the riots at the Capitol or this new video?
But what if they had played this video at the riots?
I almost want to riot right now, just out of the thought of this video. It's going to be terrible.
All right, well, stick around, everybody. We'll be coming back. Final segment, episode 39, Let's Bud Pick and Roll Podcast.